US set to impose 104% tariff on China. Gaza transforms into killing field. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for joining us. I'm Renee Fong and you are watching World Today. The United States will impose a 104% tariff on China after Beijing did not lift its retaliatory tariffs on US goods by a noon Tuesday deadline set by Donald Trump. The White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt said the president believes that China has to make a deal with the United States concerning additional tariffs.
Look, I just spoke to the president about this, and he believes that China wants to make a deal with the United States. He believes China has to make a deal with the United States. It was a mistake for China to retaliate. The president, when America is punched, he punches back hard. And the president also wanted me to tell all of you that if China reaches out to make a deal, he'll be incredibly gracious, but he's going to do what's best for the American people.
According to Leavitt, nearly 70 countries have already contacted Trump's administration to begin negotiations following his announcement last week. When questioned about the possibility of the president postponing the new tariff, Leavitt said Trump has made it clear he is not considering an extension or a pause. Investment, Trade and Industry Minister Tengku Datuk Sri Zafrul Abdul Aziz is set to lead Malaysia's delegation to Washington at end of this month to discuss the reciprocal tariffs imposed by the United States US on Malaysia. He will be accompanied by the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry MITI representatives at Malaysia's embassy in Washington, as well as other officials from the ministry. Tengku Zafrul emphasised that Malaysia remains committed to calm and constructive engagement while continuing to protect national interests amid the growing trade tensions resulting from the sweeping tariffs announced by US President Donald Trump on 2nd April. He stressed that a trade war will not benefit anyone. He further commented Malaysia's group in Washington is already working and they will have a meeting in Washington and also at the World Trade Organization WTO. In all discussions and negotiations, the ministry pledges to ensure that national interests are safeguarded. ASEAN's Indochina member states were the hardest hit by the tariffs, with Cambodia facing combined baseline and retaliatory duties totaling 49%, followed by Laos 48%, Vietnam 46% and Myanmar 44%. Thailand was subjected to tariffs of 36%, Indonesia 32%, Brunei and Malaysia both 24%, the Philippines 17%, while Singapore faced a baseline tariff of 10%. Singapore's Prime Minister Lawrence Wong expressed disappointment over the US decision to impose a 10% universal tariff rate. Speaking in Parliament, Wong emphasised that this move contradicts the global trading system the US helped establish, straining the long-standing friendship between the two nations.
In Singapore's case, we have an FTA with America. We impose zero tariffs on US imports, and we actually run a trade deficit with the US, meaning we buy more from them than they do from us. If the tariffs were truly reciprocal, and if they were meant to target only those with trade surpluses, then the tariff for Singapore should be zero. But still, we are being subjected to the 10% tariff. We are very disappointed by the US move, especially considering the deep and long-standing friendship between our two countries. These are not actions one does to a friend.
Wong also said the likelihood of a full-blown global trade war is growing, anticipating weaker near-term global growth and reduced demand for Singapore's goods and services. Singapore escaped the much larger tariff rates imposed on many of its Southeast Asian neighbours last week, but has taken issue with the imposition of the 10% universal rate due to its free trade agreement with Washington. Meanwhile, Indonesia announced a spate of concessions for US imports on Tuesday, including reducing taxes on electronic goods and steel ahead of trade negotiations with Washington over President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs. Its President Prabowo Subianto confirms Indonesia will send a high-level delegation to the United States next week, seeking a deal to ease the impact of a 32% tariff due to take effect today.
Memberi peningkatan tarif yang begitu tinggi kepada banyak negara. Ini bisa dikatakan menimbulkan ketidakpastian dunia. Banyak negara yang cemas, ya. Padahal sebenarnya pendiri-pendiri bangsa kita dari sejak dulu, dan termasuk saya bertahun-tahun saya sudah ingatkan, mari kita bangun ekonomi kita dengan sasaran berdiri di atas kaki kita sendiri.
Indonesia plans to buy liquefied petroleum gas, liquefied natural gas and soybeans from the United States as part of the negotiation efforts, said Chief Economic Minister Erlangga Hartarto, who will lead Indonesia's delegation to the US. Expanding on other efforts, Finance Minister Sri Mulyani Indrawati emphasised Indonesia would lower import taxes on steel, mining products and health equipment from the United States to 0% to 5% from rates of 5% to 10%. According to Indonesian government data, Indonesia posted a $16.8 billion trade surplus last year with the US, which was its third biggest export destination, receiving shipments worth $26.3 billion in 2024. Indonesia's main exports to the US include electronics, apparel and clothing and footwear. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba called on United States President Donald Trump to reconsider his tariff policies during a telephone conversation. During the 25-minute conversation, the two leaders agreed to continue constructive dialogue on the issue and to appoint ministers in charge of the discussions. On Tuesday, Ishiba appointed Japan's economy minister as trade negotiator with the United States during a task meeting with ministers on the tariff measures. Trump's extensive reciprocal tariffs imposed on Japan and several other nations are anticipated to significantly impact its export-driven economy and have already led to a decline in both the Japanese and US stock markets. Ishiba vowed utmost efforts to ensure the US tariffs do not affect financing and jobs, especially in Japan's smaller businesses. Trump's decision to impose a 25% levy on auto imports and a reciprocal 24% tariff on other Japanese goods is expected to deal a huge blow to Japan's export-heavy economy. Analysts predict the higher duties could knock up to 0.8% of economic growth. United States President Donald Trump signed executive orders that aimed to boost coal production in his latest action that runs counter to global efforts to curb carbon emissions. The executive orders were the latest moves by the Trump administration that clash with global aims to reduce coal power and cut harmful greenhouse gas emissions that fuel climate change. According to the Energy Information Administration, coal-burning plants generate less than 20% of U.S. electricity, a drop from 50% in 2000. This decline is attributed to the increased production of natural gas due to fracking and other drilling methods. Additionally, the rise of solar and wind energy has further reduced the reliance on coal.
We're going to have guarantees that government cannot close them down, close you down, and destroy your lives. To that end, I'm also instructing Secretary Wright to save the Choi coal plant in Arizona, big plant, which has been slated for destruction. We're going to keep those coal miners on the job.
Trump, a Republican, campaigned on a promise to increase U.S. energy output and has sought to roll back energy and environmental regulations since taking office on 20th January. Iran said a new nuclear deal could be agreed with the United States, provided Tehran's longtime adversary shows sufficient goodwill in upcoming talks. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Iran's principal aim remained the lifting of sweeping U.S. sanctions. Their reimposition by President Donald Trump in 2018 has dealt a heavy blow to the Iranian economy. Trump on Monday made the surprise announcement that his administration would open talks with Iran. He added the talks would be direct, but Araghchi insisted his negotiations with U.S. West Asia envoy Steve Witkoff this coming Saturday would be indirect.
که مذاکره شکلش مهم نیست، مستقیم یا غیر مستقیم. من توضیح میدم البته. به نظر من اون چه که اهمیت داره مؤثر بودن یا غیر مؤثر بودن مذاکرات هست. جدی بودن یا جدی نبودن طرفین در مذاکرات هست، نیات طرفین در مذاکره هست و اراده برای رسیدن به یک راه حل. این هست که در مذاکره و در هر گفتگویی ملاک عمل هست.
He also stressed that a new deal can be reached if the U.S. shows enough of the necessary willingness, adding that the ball is in America's court. The U.S. president pulled out of the last deal in 2018 during his first presidency, followed by an Iranian decision 1 year later to stop complying with its own obligations under the deal. Russia's lower house of parliament has voted to ratify a treaty to deepen political, military and economic ties with Iran as Moscow moves closer to its key ally. In the treaty, the sides agreed to help each other counter common security threats, but it stops short of a mutual defense pact like the one signed between Russia and North Korea last year. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Andrei Rudenko said the signing of the treaty does not mean the establishment of a military alliance with Iran or mutual military assistance. Instead, the treaty states that if either side is subjected to aggression, the other will not provide assistance to the aggressor. The comprehensive strategic partnership deal was signed by Presidents Vladimir Putin and Masoud Pezeshkian in January, with votes in Moscow's rubber-stamped parliament necessary before it can come into force. Putin at the time called it a breakthrough document, while Pezeshkian said it would open a new chapter in relations between Iran and Russia in all fields. Coming up, rescuers rush after Dominican Republic nightclub roof collapse, kills at least 98. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres stressed that Gaza has become a killing field because Israel has continued to block aid. He noted that more than an entire month has passed without a drop of aid into Gaza, including food, fuel, medicine and commercial supplies. Pointing to the Geneva Conventions governing the treatment of people in war, Guterres emphasized the obligation of the occupying power to ensure the provision of food and medical supplies to the population.
Good afternoon. The Secretary-General makes a... No humanitarian supplies can enter Gaza. Meanwhile, at the crossing points,
Food, medicine, and shelter supplies are piling up, and vital equipment is stuck. International humanitarian law also includes the obligation to respect humanitarian relief personnel. And I want to say a special word about those humanitarian heroes in Gaza. They are under fire and yet doing all they can to follow the path they choose to help people.
He added Israel's newly proposed authorization mechanisms for aid delivery risk further controlling and callously limiting aid down to the last calorie and grain of flour, demanding guarantees for the unhindered entry of aid to the coastal territory. Guterres said the UN will not participate in any arrangement that does not fully respect the humanitarian principles, including humanity, impartiality, independence, and neutrality. Gaza Health Authority said on Tuesday the Palestinian death toll in the Gaza Strip has risen to 50,810, with 115,688 others injured, following 18 months of Israeli military operations since 7th October 2023. It also confirmed in the past 24 hours, Israeli military operations have killed 58 people and wounded 213 others in Gaza. Gaza Health Ministry announced since Israel resumed its military operations in Gaza on 18th March, following the collapse of a ceasefire, 1,449 Palestinians have been killed and 3,647 injured. US President Donald Trump once again proposed controlling and owning Gaza and relocating the Palestinians living there to different countries during a meeting with Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House on Monday. Trump also called the release of hostages held in Gaza a top priority and expressed optimism about ongoing negotiations, but provided no specific details. Meanwhile, in a press statement released on Tuesday, Hamas warned that Israel's ongoing military escalation in the Gaza Strip endangers the lives of Israeli hostages, rather than offering any hope for their safe return, stressing that the only way to secure the return of the hostages is through negotiations. Rescuers raced to find survivors under the rubble of a Dominican Republic nightclub where at least 98 people, including a Major League Baseball star, were killed when the roof collapsed. Renowned Dominican merengue singer Ruby Perez, who was on stage at the popular Jet Set nightclub when the roof caved in shortly after midnight, was one of those caught up in the calamity. Emergency workers said dozens of people were trapped in the rubble, some of whom were heard crying for help. Among the dead was 51-year-old retired MLB pitcher Octavio Dotel, who won a World Series in 2011 with the St. Louis Cardinals. Local media reported that he was rescued alive, but died of injuries while being taken to hospital. And over 370 rescue personnel combed mounds of fallen bricks, steel bars and tin sheets for survivors. President Luis Abinader declared 3 days of national mourning, while authorities issued a call for Dominicans to donate blood. Local media said there were between 500 and 1,000 people in the club when the disaster struck. The club has a capacity for 700 people seated and about 1,000 people standing. The club issued a statement saying it was working fully and transparently with the authorities regarding the incident. South Korea's military fired warning shots when around 10 North Korean soldiers briefly crossed the heavily fortified border that divides the peninsula. The troops were spotted around 5 p.m. local time in the demilitarized zone between the two countries, parts of which are heavily mined and overgrown. Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff said its military conducted a warning broadcast and fired warning shots, and the North Korean soldiers moved north. The military is closely monitoring the movements of the North Korean soldiers and taking necessary measures. Some of the soldiers who crossed the frontier were armed and wearing bulletproof vests. North Korean troops made a series of small border incursions last year, which Seoul said at the time were likely accidental. Relations between the two Koreas are at one of their lowest points in years, and Pyongyang has previously conducted missile launches or other provocations around the time of key South Korean events. With relations souring, the North last year blew up roads and railways connecting it to South and fortified areas of the border with more mines. Indonesia plans to clear forest land roughly the size of Belgium. Forest land of about 30,689 square kilometers will be cleared to grow sugarcane for bioethanol, along with rice and food crops. Citing environment watchdogs, the Associated Press report mentioned this project is considered as the largest planned deforestation in the world. The current president, Prabowo Subianto, has expanded such projects to include crops to produce bioethanol, a renewable fuel made from plants like sugarcane or corn, in pursuit of Indonesia's ambition to improve its energy mix and develop more renewable sources. However, the move directly poses a risk to the indigenous communities who rely on the land for their survival. Additionally, it posed threats to some rare plants and several endangered species, including orangutans, elephants, and giant forest flowers. Indonesia has been building food estates, massive plantations designed to improve the country's food security for decades, with varying level of success. The issue is particularly critical in the country, which has already lost over 74 million hectares of forest due to various activities. A prominent American academic was detained on Tuesday and charged with insulting Thailand's monarchy, marking a rare case of a foreign national falling foul of the kingdom's strict lèse-majesté law. Police said Paul Chambers, a lecturer at Thailand's Naresuan University, reported to a precinct in the northern province of Phitsanulok after a warrant for his arrest was issued last week following a complaint filed by the army. Chambers, who has spent more than a decade teaching Southeast Asia politics in Thailand, is in pre-trial detention awaiting a decision on his bail request. He was also charged with a computer crime violation. Wanapat Jen Romjit, a lawyer for Chambers, said the accusation stemmed from a blurb for an online academic seminar last year at which he was a speaker. Thai King Maha Vajiralongkorn and his close family are protected from criticism by the lèse-majesté law, which each offence punishable by up to 15 years in jail. Public discussion of the law has for decades been a taboo issue, with dozens of people jailed for perceived insults of the crown. The Ministry of Hajj and Umrah has set 13th April as the last date for individuals performing Umrah to enter Saudi Arabia, while 29th April has been established as the departure deadline in preparation for the upcoming Hajj season. According to the Saudi press agency SPA, the ministry emphasizes that staying beyond this deadline subjects violators to statutory penalties. The ministry urges individuals as well as Umrah companies and institutions to comply with the regulations and instructions governing the timely departure of Umrah performers. It confirmed that exceeding the allowed stay will be considered a violation, and a company's neglect to report such delays could lead to financial penalties of up to 100,000 Saudi Arabian rial, as well as legal repercussions for those accountable. Fines will also be multiplied depending on how many individuals have violated the departure deadlines. On Monday, the Ministry of Interior announced Hajj and Umrah service companies and establishments must adhere to all relevant rules and guidelines. Up next, Declan Rice's stunning free kick double fires Arsenal to 3-0 win over Real Madrid. Declan Rice's two fantastic free kicks and a striker's finish from Mikel Merino gave Arsenal an emphatic 3-0 victory over Real Madrid in the first leg of their Champions League quarter-final at the Emirates Stadium.
The hosts had the better of the first half as Real began slowly, with Eduardo Camavinga almost conceding a calamitous own goal when he blocked Antonio Rudiger's clearance before Thomas Partey shot straight in Thibaut Courtois. Real grew into the contest and threatened on the break, though their few opportunities came from Arsenal errors and the reigning champions looked disjointed throughout. Courtois was by far the busier goalkeeper and produced a stunning double save on the stroke of halftime to keep the game level. There was no stopping Rice's opener though, a fierce shot round the wall and beyond Courtois in the 58th minute for the midfielder's first senior goal from a direct free kick. Rice's second free kick was even better than the first, curled straight into the top corner in the 70th minute to leave the 15-time European champions looking stunned. Merino then coolly fired substitute Leandro Trossard's pullback into the bottom corner 15 minutes from the time to give Arsenal a sizable lead to take to Madrid next week.
Inter Milan scored an 88th minute winner through David Fratesi to snatch a 2-1 victory over stunned hosts Bayern Munich in their Champions League quarter-final first leg.
The Germans, who were missing several key players to injury, including goalkeeper Manuel Neuer and attacking midfielder Jamal Musiala, along with a trio of offenders, had two chances through Michael Olise and Harry Kane in the opening 15 minutes. The Italians gradually grew bolder, with Carlos Augusto firing into the side netting and Lautaro Martinez charging into the box but slipping just before shooting. The Inter captain, however, made no mistake when Marcus Thuram found him with a back heel flick from a Carlos Augusto cutback, and the Argentine completed the swift move with a deft finish. Bayern then pinned Inter in their own half, but neither Konrad Laimer, Rafael Guerreiro nor Kane, with his low drive in the 80th minute, could find an equalizer until crowd favourite Thomas Müller was in the right place to score with 5 minutes left. Their joy, however, only lasted 3 minutes, with Fratesi tapping in the winner in a heartbreaking finale for the Bayern fans in the Allianz Arena. The treble-chasing Italians host Bayern in the return leg on 16th April.
And that wraps up today's edition of World Today. In our top story, additional 104% tariffs on China to take effect on Wednesday. Do join us again tonight at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 or saluran Berita RTM. Alternatively, you can stream us live on RTM Click's website and mobile app. Till then, I'm Renee Fong. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Thanks for watching and have a pleasant afternoon.